We'll be live. Yeah, we're live now. So I'm just going to double check that it's on Facebook, that we're being received. Yeah, looking good. Excellent. So, okay. So, kia ora everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of our Talking Futures live stream, which we run through our Focus Futures Facebook page. And on Talking Futures, we get people from the community and we talk to them about their experience in the workforce, how they entered the workforce, all their different jobs they've had, and what they're up to now. So I'm very excited today to be joined with Monique Esplin. And Monique, I've just been hearing, has a lot of stories that she's going to share, has a really, really cool career path, career journey, including journalism, lawyer, leader in government. So I'm excited to hear all about it. So maybe we'll just start off with, I should let everyone know as well, if you have any questions at any point, just jump in the chat and ask away, and we'll stop a couple of times to check those. So I'll keep an eye on those if they come through. So maybe just start by introducing yourself. Tell us where you're from, what you're up to.
Perfect. Thanks, Helen. Kia ora tātou katoa, ko Kaputiko Mahaka toku maunga, ko Owhio toku awa, no o te poti ahau, kei te tari turi o te corona oe mahi ana, he kai whakahaere ahau, ko Monique Esplin toku ingoa, no reira tēnā koutou katoa. So I'm Monique Esplin. I'm the manager of the Government Legal Network Programs and Capability team. So I'm originally from Dunedin, as Helen, poti. And so I did a lot of my study down in Dunedin because University of Otago is obviously the best university. And I started out my career as a journalist because I had a real passion for writing. And let's be honest, it's a paid gossip, and that's right up my alley. And then So true. And some of those transferable skills that I developed were about taking complex information and making it really accessible and palatable to people, communicating, engaging with people, and all of those things really lead naturally into a legal career. So I always wondered about what it would be like to be a lawyer. And I thought, well, I don't have any real responsibilities, and I was living in Auckland at the time. And so I decided to give it a go. And obviously got into law, applied for my first job thinking I won't get it, but I'll get some good feedback. And I was actually still studying at the time, doing postgrad. So when I got the job, I had to make a decision about actually, do I want to be a lawyer? And I thought, yeah, I do. So I went and did a couple of years of experience in a private practice firm in Dunedin, and then thought, well, what's it like in government? So I went off to the Ministry of Social Development for a year and a half. Nice. And then I thought, I still wonder what private practice is like. So I went back to private practice for a year and thought, no, I think public is my fit. So then I went into to work at the Ministry for Culture and Heritage, fascinating work. Then I went to the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment and worked on building stuff and tenancy stuff and employment stuff. And now I'm a manager in government. So I have a real passion for leadership and helping people fulfill their potential. And that kind of leads me to where I am today, where I'm hopefully going to provide some useful information for job seekers about how to get your foot in the door.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, that's a really wide range. You've been all over the show, which is super cool. I'm excited to hear more about it. Cool. And cool that you're from Dunedin. Me too. It's a great little place in Dunedin.
Yeah, it is.
And a good place to study too. That's really cool.
I think so. Yeah, it's a real, that university has a real sort of culture and a heart to it, which makes it a real experience. Yeah.
It was a big decision to not study in Dunedin, but I thought, oh no, better try something new, better get out of Dunedin for a bit.
Yeah, if you're not trying something new, you're not stretching and growing and developing, Helen. So you're doing the right thing.
That's true. It was self-development.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I do like when we get people on this series, I was telling you earlier that I do love to ask people go right back and sort of tell us maybe about like the first job you ever had, or maybe what were some jobs that you had during school or before you even studied even.
So my first job was as I was working at I think it was called, it's Mar Higgins now, but I can't remember what it was called back then. And I was awful at it. And basically some person left me to my own devices and didn't really give me a whole lot of training. So I just made up stuff as I went along. And I remember, for example, someone came up and said, "Can I have an iced chocolate?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I didn't know what that was. And I was like, well, it obviously has chocolate in it, and it obviously has ice in it. And so I just made it up. So I don't think that was my finest moment. But I have had other. This was quite a lot. I would have been in my final year of high school probably. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that was it. But I wrote down my other jobs because I actually needed to remember. It's been so long. So I've worked as a library assistant, and I worked at the medical and dental libraries at Otago, even though I wasn't studying those topics. So here's a tip for anybody who ever works in those areas: do not open the textbooks. There are some horrifying sites in there. I've worked in the registry office. I know, it's hilarious. So I worked at the registry office at Otago University during the summers as well, so I could do full-time work. And highlights included there was this one student who would change his name by deed poll and then register that with the university each summer. So he had fish and chips one year, isosceles triangle another. That was really interesting. We also had a person who tried to apply for Otago, and it was clearly a fake transcript because it was misspelt. So really interesting stuff.
Oh my goodness, you've seen it all.
I know. I've worked as a lifeguard for a couple of years, which was quite fun at Moana Pool. You'll know that, Helen.
Pool. Love Moana Pool. Live very close to Moana Pool. That was the spot.
That's a good place. I was a swimming teacher. I was a waitress, but that really only lasted about 10 days because I lit toast on fire. I didn't realize that was possible either, but it was not my forte. I didn't get fired, I must say, but I was just like, I think I'll just bow out gracefully now. And I worked at Arbuckles where I folded heaps of towels one summer, and there's a really interesting scent that comes with those towels when they arrive from wherever they are, and that will haunt me for the rest of my life. But the other thing is you start folding all of your stuff in your flat in the way that you've been folding it at work.
You become a professional folder.
Exactly. So I had to behave my way out of that. And then, of course, with my sort of more professional roles, I've been a journalist.
Yeah,
I was a media advisor for a politician when I was working as a journalist as well. I was a writer at Auckland University. I've been a lawyer in private practice, but also a government lawyer. I've been an acting chief legal advisor where you lead a legal team. And now I'm a manager of the Government Legal Network Programs and Capability team. And our team provides information, resources, and professional development opportunities to over 1,200 lawyers that are part of the Government Legal Network. So no 2 days are the same in my current role, but I like to think that all of those kind of, for want of a better word, crappier jobs, there's something in that. It gives you a bit of life experience, a bit of resilience, and certainly some funny stories as well.
100%. That's awesome. And it's so great for us to hear of these really, really diverse range of jobs and employment opportunities, because you're exactly right. There's people talk about, they talk about that shearing job that they had on the farm and how actually that taught them the most resilience they've ever learned from any job, or customer service roles and communicating with customers and speaking to people, that built the foundation of their ability to talk to strangers and to public speak. So I mean, like these all come up from these groundwork jobs. And it's also a great example of working your way up through a number of different roles and upskilling on your way through that journey, which is really, really cool. So I guess you wanted to do journalism. That was your was that what you wanted to do when you were younger, when you were little? Did you think maybe I will be working in a legal team, or what did you think you were going to be?
And it was really, when I tell a story about how I kind of got into journalism, it sounds like I watched, this is actually a really terrible story. It sounds really sad, but for me, it was kind of inspiring. I remember there was this journalist who was based overseas who was in a war-torn country. I can't remember the detail because I was quite young, but I remember that she was shot in the face and lost the ability to speak properly. And she was obviously physically deformed, but I was so inspired by the fact that as a journalist, she'd put herself in harm's way, survived that experience, and continued to be a journalist. So in my mind as a young girl, I thought that journalism was this action-packed, sort of romantic, passionate kind of career path, which it
Hollywood
can be.
journalism as well is like you're out there in the field.
Yeah. Wow. Which it can be. It wasn't quite that way in New Zealand, I must say, although I did have some great experiences. But what I started with was working out what qualification you need. And journalism is quite a unique area because there's often a lot of people who have worked in journalism who don't have any qualifications, who have worked their way through to a particular role. And then there's a bit of a new school generation coming through where they do have qualifications in journalism. So there's quite a juxtaposition of those people working in the same environment. For me, I recognised this and knew that there could be, in order to set myself apart from other people working in the same industry, I wanted a qualification that was really recognised. So I went to the career advisor at the university and asked them about the different journalism qualifications, and I picked the one that had the best reputation. So I did my homework before I went into journalism.
And that's a good little piece of information, like when choosing your degree, whether it's at Victoria, Massey, or any of at Welltech. Any of these qualifications, it always really pays to do exactly that and ask them, what's this going to get me? Cool. Yeah, so exactly. They advised.
Well, they had sort of like, they had a document that actually ranked the different tertiary providers, and they sort of do this to some extent sometimes with universities as well. And there's different ways that they rank universities according to particular the research that they're doing, there's different ways that you can look at these things. But I think particularly for law, there's it pays to look at who the lecturers are, what papers they're providing. I'm really pleased to see actually that they're bringing in, which is something that I didn't have before.
Sorry, you just cut out for a second. What they were bringing in? What were they bringing?
They're bringing in tikanga into law schools, or as a compulsory component for law schools. So that's something new, and it'll be interesting actually to see what that looks like for each university. So that might be something that people want to look into if they're going to study law, and particularly because going into the government sector, it's a really important part. Working in the government sector as a government lawyer is about recognising that Te Ao Māori, the treaty, and tikanga are part of decision making, and it really sort of permeates through the government sector. So it'll be interesting to see how that's incorporated into university study going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super interesting, and it's really cool. That's very progressive. That's a good push in the right direction, which is fantastic. And I guess, so moving from journalism to law, is that something that a lot of journalists were doing, or is that a kind of shift that many people did, or not really?
It was funny because one of the things that I had to sort of get my head around was, I'm going to be an adult student, and in law, I'm going to be one of the people when I was doing my English degree that you would be like, oh, that person's asking a question.
The mature student.
The person in the front row. Yeah. And then I was that person, and I was annoying, and I was in the front row, and I was asking those questions. But the reason I was doing that is because I'd had the life experience. I'd had the shitty jobs. I'd had another career, and I felt really motivated to do what I was doing. And I also understood how universities worked. Yeah. One thing I would really advise is having that retrospective understanding now is if you're going to go to university, always sign up for a library tour, because the library staff know everything about how to do assignments and how to find information and what databases to use. So do that before you even have your first class. You can contact them, and they often have things online where you sign up for those tours. Do it, because it's so invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely endorse that one. Having just left uni and discovering the library maybe in my second year.
Yeah.
Wow, it was suddenly like, oh my God, I can just read like all of this stuff. I don't need to look it up. I can just read it. It was quite, yeah. And the library staff are fantastic. And so for all of you, because for anyone who is watching, who is thinking about going into further study, which I know a few of you guys are, that's remember to write that one down. Get the library tour. It'll be worth it. That's cool. So was there a point, so what was the point for you where you sort of moved from this idea of wanting to do journalism or wanting to maybe be out in the field and be like, you know, in the war zones doing the journalism.
And it changed quickly.
And then when did you sort of grab onto this idea of law? Was there a certain moment for you, or somebody that you looked up to that you saw doing it?
So I worked in various areas of journalism for approximately 3 years in Auckland. So what I tried to do was get exposure to the different areas of journalism. So, for example, while I was studying, doing my postgraduate qualification in journalism, I did some freelance work for a women's business magazine called Her Magazine. So you can Google me and find an article on tall poppy syndrome. And that was, you know, to have something on my CV for when I finished. And then I wanted to know not just what it was like to do print journalism, but I also volunteered for a couple of weeks during the semester break to go and work for Asia Down Under, which is it's not on anymore, but it was a television program. And I learned about behind the scenes, how they prepare for a particular show, how it's shot. I met all the journalists, came up with some story ideas. I featured in one, which I hope never surfaces. And
I'll find it.
I'm so afraid. And then I also worked as a media advisor for a politician.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I also worked for Auckland University as a writer, which was basically doing a bit of promotional stuff for them, finding people who had studied, and then sort of profiling them, because they obviously represented people who had done well at the Ministry of Education, Faculty of Education rather, at the University of Auckland. And I was also, I think I mentioned, a media advisor to a politician as well. So I feel like I tried my hand at a whole bunch of different things in order to sort of find out what I liked. And the turning point for me to move to law was really that I was at a point in my life where I didn't have, you know, a house, children, responsibilities, and I'd always wondered what it would be like. And so I thought it was now or never, really. And Otago is a natural choice for me because I knew the Faculty of Law was really held in high regard. And absolutely. I also had family down in Dunedin. So it made sense to kind of go back home. It's an environment that I knew, you know, and I have no regrets, actually. I know I've heard many people say that you have 3 careers throughout your life. I think it's more like 6 or 7.
Well, yes. So hearing all this, yes, absolutely. Cool. Well, that's good. That's good.
I'm not done yet. So I think it's really key to be open to opportunities.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So with that in mind, I guess, what does a typical day in your life look like throughout your, I guess, your legal work, or maybe what you're just doing now? What does it look like to do your job?
So bearing in mind that I've moved from a legal role, which is providing legal advice, into a role where I basically provide resource information and professional development opportunities to government lawyers. So there really are no 2 days that are the same. I'd say that my day starts very early because I have a 1-year-old. And on that, I just wanted to say that returning to work as a working mum, so I went back to work when she was 10 weeks old, full time. And I am so thankful for, you know, the support of my partner and my employer, because they made it possible for me to do that. And that is one thing that I really value in the government sector, is that it recognises that people have competing responsibilities and they try to accommodate that. But and the other thing is often you feel that guilt as a mum being at work all the time, like you're missing out, and somehow your child isn't going to feel as connected to you. But I don't think
that's grow up in one day.
Exactly. She'll be driving to pick me up, and I don't know what happened. But it's not that way at all. And actually, I think probably working full time as it demonstrates to your children that you can have it all, really. You become the role model for them. And so you should, I'm not telling people what to do, but for me personally, I think it's really important to demonstrate that life doesn't stop because you start having children, that actually another part of you is developed that's even more valuable in a work environment. I now feel like I have more empathy, more understanding of working parents for sure, more appreciation of sleep, all of those things. But my average day, while starting early, is really about thinking about how I can develop relationships across the network, because a lot of the work that we do is reliant on people volunteering their time. So I think thinking about not only what your objective is, but also what the pressures are on those people is really important to develop those relationships. And we deliver some really great programs. So we've got a GLN summer clerk program, which places law students into government legal teams over summer for 13 weeks. We've also got a graduate program, which places law graduates into 3 different government agencies over the course of 2 years. So they're placed in each agency for 8 months at a time. You get paid for both of those as well. So it's a great insight into what it's like to be a government lawyer. We also provide, it's great. We provide practice groups, which are led by volunteers within the network, volunteer lawyers, and they're subject matter specific. So we provide regular meetings or roundtable events that talk about the latest kind of legal developments, and anybody from the network can come along generally. To hear about that, not just because you work in that area, but you just might be interested in that area. And so we've got practice groups on legislation, on employment law, on treaty Māori matters, a whole bunch. And then we also have an annual conference which we run, where all lots of government lawyers from across Aotearoa come together and they hear about legal developments and important things that we think are relevant for government lawyers. We've got a newsletter which comes out every month. We've got a jobs and secondments update which comes out every 2 weeks. It's a lot of it is sort of thinking about the needs of the network and then trying to deliver for those government lawyers. And I think probably having been one makes it much easier to understand what it's like for them.
You've got that personal perspective and you can think back about what have I really appreciated.
But thinking of the audience listening today, because I am constantly thinking about the tips and tricks that I can kind of pass on, I think if I looked back through my career, there are some common threads. So I do really, I love engaging with people and developing relationships. I love writing. I love speaking. I love taking complex information and simplifying it so that people understand it. I love very action orientated, and I like delivering things like concrete things, and I like meaningful work, which the public sector provides. So my piece of advice to people listening would be, if you're really unsure, and I've had this conversation with many people who don't know what they want to do with themselves, that's okay. Nobody comes out of the womb knowing exactly what to do with their life. It's a journey. So as simple as it sounds, a pros and cons list is really helpful. And it doesn't have to be that you're thinking about an actual role. Absolutely. Just the things that you enjoy doing and maybe where your strengths lie. And you don't need to be as specific as saying, well, I'm great at essay writing. It could just be that, you think about the times that you feel most fulfilled, the times that you're at your happiest. And it could be, you're at your happiest doing nothing, for example. Well, I mean, there's no job that actually caters to that, but there could be things. Winning lotto, I don't know.
That's the job.
But what is it about that moment in time that you actually enjoy? Is it being around nature, for example? And you can probably find a job that translates to that. So take the time to really think about what it is that makes you feel really good and simplify it that much to writing it down.
That's fantastic advice. And I think, and a lot of the people we talk to, I'm so glad you said that, honestly, because it can be so overwhelming for young people that are jumping into the workforce. It's like maybe they don't even know, what they like at that stage. So yeah, really refining those things that make you happy is such an important thing. And I think just holding on to a few of those things that are that are going to dictate what industry you go into or what job you take is going to be really helpful guidance. Some people often say, when they get a job opportunity presented to them, and there is this big drive, when you're young, to take every opportunity you can, because if you don't, someone else will, and there's this race. So people have really talked about, stopping and looking at this job opportunity and extracting the good parts of it. Can you really see, that actually is nice because it's outdoors and I really like nature. So maybe if nature isn't your ideal, you can really go back to, well, what makes me happy? Oh, well, there is an element of that in there, which is really important to hold on to. And that is also important when you're kind of working your way up. You might have to start somewhere that isn't your dream, but still has those elements of things that make you happy. So yeah, thank you for that advice. That's really, really great for people to hear. I guess because you've had such a broad range of job experiences, this might be hard to answer, but I would love to know if there's maybe your top kind of skills that you've managed to develop that have really stood you in good stead throughout, as a blanket kind of throughout all of these experiences, and maybe something that you do talk about in an interview process. What's that sort of?
I thought about this sort of not this particular question, but I'm very much thinking about the audience and what they can kind of take away. So rather than thinking about the skills that I've developed, because there are things like, communication skills and relationship building and all of that stuff, I thought about the advice I would give myself if I was looking back on my career. That's my next question, so you can take that one on. I don't want to miss giving this, because I've really thought about it for quite a long time. So I jokingly wrote, so aside from my actual practical advice, which I live by today, which is nothing good happens after midnight, live by it and you will be saved time after time. But also,
I need to live by that one.
But I also went on this great leadership course a couple of years ago now, and the person taking it said something that really stuck with me, which is be really conscious of the language that you use. So you are your biggest advocate. You should always be your biggest cheerleader. But it's so common for people to have that imposter syndrome, to have that small voice inside them that really sort of criticizes you. And it's so common, but I think a starting point is to change the way that you use your language. So in emails, I've stopped using apologizing, essentially. I'm sorry to bug you, but I'm just emailing you about blah, blah, blah. There's no need for the apologies. You are entitled to email someone and just be quite not assertive, but just get to the point. It's okay to be emailing someone and asking for something. And also when you introduce yourself, don't say I'm just a law student or I'm just a junior, or you're in that position because you're entitled to be in that position. So don't be apologetic through using the word just. Be really conscious about the messaging that you are delivering by using apologetic language, and just eliminate it from your, obviously don't forget to apologize when you actually have to, but aside from that, remove it from your vocabulary. And then the other three pieces of advice I have are, the first one is to seek feedback. So that looks like, for me, before you apply for a job, get somebody to review your CV and cover letter, or more than one person. And I do that. I've done that throughout my career, because there'll be different jobs that I'm applying for, which mean that I value some input. And it's so easy to get tunnel vision and think you're conveying one message when in actual fact you're not. Or you've gone through chronologically and told them your whole history, but you haven't actually said why you're good for this job. And then in the line of feedback, if you don't get the interview, you can ask for feedback from the person. They may not give it because they might have had a lot of applications, but there's no harm asking. And if you don't get the job, there's probably something that didn't go quite right in the interview, so get feedback about that as well. And there's no harm in asking. The worst case scenario is they say, we don't have time to provide you with some feedback, or, they don't reply at all. But that's okay, because you'll get something eventually. And then in the line of thought with feedback, also get a mentor. Try to find somebody that you trust. So I've got a great coach who used to be a chief legal advisor of a legal team and now has her own coaching business. And I really trust her insights because she understands how government works, but also she'll tell me what I should hear, not what I want to hear.
Yeah, that's important.
Yes. And my second piece of advice is consider your online presence. So as a employer, I have been known to go online and see what, people's online presence looks like, because you are selling yourself online. So remove those embarrassing Facebook posts and photos and just try to keep things more professional once you start job hunting. And just think about the fact that a potential employer can see that. And the other thing with the online presence is to create a LinkedIn profile. And it's kind of like, like if you were buying shares in the share market, having your money work for you while you're sleeping, it's the same thing with LinkedIn. You put your profile up there and there's going to be recruiters looking around. So even though you're looking online for potential jobs, recruiters could see your online profile and contact you. And get someone to look over that online post on LinkedIn as well, so you don't have any obvious spelling mistakes or anything as well.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic one. I mean, it's really, I'm glad you have mentioned all of those things because it's very affirming. Because we do, I know you guys watching will be like, yeah, we had to do that at Bogus Futures. I have been drilling it into them to make that clear those Facebooks up and get those LinkedIn profiles up. Another one as well, which is on that same one as, making sure your online presence is the voicemails. We cheer runs voicemails, but some of them are just like, hi, bye.
That's so true.
There's some very creative ones. And even though voicemail seems like old fashioned, it's still, people still hear it. And it's good to have a nice professional voicemail.
Totally.
Yeah, so that's great. That's
great. I had one more thing on my list, which I wanted to impart.
Go for it.
So my final one is, when I was deciding what I wanted to do with my life, I undertook unpaid work experience. So I was doing my postgrad qualification in planning after I'd done my law degree, and I was not sure whether I wanted to go into environmental law, which I'd had a real passion for, or whether I wanted to be a planner. So during my year of study, that first year of my postgrad study, I went and did unpaid, this is the key, unpaid work experience for a QC environmental lawyer in Dunedin, who was amazing, such a great mentor, an amazing man. Royden Somerville, got to say, he's great. And I also did some planning experience with a man named Keith Havel in Dunedin. And it helped me to really understand what the job is practically, but also I could put that on my CV. And it really helped to get my foot in the door. And I think there seems to be sometimes there's a little reluctance to do things for free, but it's not for free. You're investing in your future. You're just not seeing the monetary reward right now.
Excellent advice. That is really good, because that is what we really do encourage people to do. And it's even with our admin work experience that we run here. It just provides you with, you learn a bunch of skills, you're upskilling, and then it's also just a speaking point for your interview. What experience have you had in this industry? Maybe none that's been paid or no employment per se, but you have had all of this experience, and immersing yourself in the environment is such a fantastic way as well to learn about how the job will actually look on that day-to-day kind of setting. So that's awesome. And great practical pieces of advice. That's really good for everyone to hear, because you do learn to be resilient throughout the whole process. And but having that practical advice is really, really useful. Now, I do also want to ask you, because I'm genuinely intrigued, because I know we talked about it before. Have you had any terrible experiences?
Well, yes. Helen, I've got a list, and I had to limit my list.
I promise we'll end on a high, but I do want to ask you this one.
It is pretty funny. So what I'd say, the caveat I'd start with is, at the time of all of these things happening, it felt awful, but I find them incredibly entertaining now. So here's a few. So I failed 7th form, and that's because when we had, it wasn't NCEA, it was before that. So you could take 3 papers to get into university. And so I just took those 3 papers, and the rest were just like, didn't count towards getting into university. And then I had a car. So I used to go to the beach all the time and because I'd never failed anything. So I just assumed that I just wouldn't fail. And I remember opening up the letter in front of my family and saying, oh, I failed. And they cracked up laughing because they thought I was joking, because I've never failed anything. So I had to repeat 7th form. And my English teacher said to me, you should aim just to pass. I not only got an A, but I went on to do a BA in English with honours. So what I'd like to say is failure does not define you. And there's a distinction between laziness and being stupid.
Okay, that's good.
Yes. And then when I was a journalist, I turned up to a car versus cyclist accident in Auckland, and the person that I hadn't even got round to interview yet turned around and called me a parasite. So that just helped me to learn how to be resilient. It's quite funny now. There was another time when I was a lifeguard at Moana Pool, and I was the only female staff member, including all of the cleaning staff. And so I had to go down to a toilet cubicle and clean poop off the floor, the wall, the ceiling, every surface.
Oh my God.
Again, resilience.
Yes.
It makes you appreciate the next job, I'll tell you that much. I also, so I've only got 2 more, but they're hugely entertaining. So when I was doing law, I went to do a practice test for property law, and it was basically to give me an idea of what to expect for the actual main test at the end of the year, but I didn't do any study. And so when I got the mark back, it said 14%, and the lecturer wrote on there that I showed a frightening lack of understanding. Frightening. I wish I'd kept it and put it up beside my desk, but alas, it's gone now. And then the final one is when I was working in a workplace, which I won't name, I was introduced by a colleague as, this is Monique, she doesn't have any children. No relevance. It was very awkward. And it just made all of these experiences, I must say, help you to determine what the right fit is for you, what you want and what you don't want, you know. And also, I'd like to think it's helped me to be a better manager now, because I've had all of these random experiences and I've done the shitty jobs and I've had the terrible managers. And I like to think that I've taken the best components of people and learned from the worst components of people to become better in who I am.
There you go. And I like how you've wrapped that up in a very positive light. Yeah, wow, that you had your fair share of extremely strange experiences. But like you say, character building, self-development, and look at you now.
Yeah, in the words of Oprah, it didn't happen to you, it happened for you.
Yes, Oprah. Thank you for that one. Thank you so much. We've all learned so much from that, I'm sure. I certainly have. I've taken lots of notes, actually, which I'll be passing on to all of the clients. But yeah, it's so great to hear about your experience in such a diverse range of jobs and employment, which is so cool. And some of those pretty crazy experiences that you've had, good and bad. And yeah, for me personally, loved hearing about that decision to go back to study and to kind of seize that moment. And then also, the journey you had becoming a mother as well, and going back into full-time work and how that's changed your life, I guess, which is really cool. But yes, just to reiterate those pieces of advice, do you want to wrap it up with those core pieces of advice? Because I think they're super important for our job seekers.
The core pieces of advice: seek feedback. That means getting someone to look at your CV. get feedback when you apply for jobs, and also get a coach or a mentor. Then consider your online presence. So think about Facebook, think about getting your LinkedIn profile up. And then the final part is think about unpaid work experience, because it's not the money that you're getting in your bank account now, it's an investment in your future.
Awesome. All very important pieces of advice. So thank you so much, Monique, for sharing. It's really been valuable advice for us. And great to hear about all of your experiences.
Oh, kia ora. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope people who are online got something out of this. And for those of you who are interested in being a government lawyer, we have our GLN Summer Clerk program being recruited for next year. So keep an eye out on www.gln.govt.nz.
Nice. And if anybody wants to talk to Monique further about anything that she's talked about, then just get in touch with me and I will pass on your email address if that's all good.
Perfect.
With you. Awesome. So thank you so much again.
Thank you, Hannah.
Kia ora for everything. Okay. Well, I'll talk to you later. Ka kite.
Ka kite.